Hello there, and welcome to my series, The Finished Story Arcs of Star Wars The Clone Wars, which comprises of the 3 story arcs that were chosen to be finished in 2020. In this video, we will be covering the second of these, The Bad Batch. Please note there will be spoilers for the Son of Dathomir comic, The Bad Batch TV show, Star Wars Rebels, and The Ahsoka Show. Before 2020, this story arc was the 4th one to be left unfinished after the cancellation of the Clone Wars in March 2013, coming after the Bounty Hunter arc, Crystal Crisis on Utapau, and Ahsoka's Walkabout. Originally planned as the full original 20-episode 7th season premiere arc, this is the only unfinished story arc to get finished and keep its originally planned season and episode number placement. When Disney Plus ordered a Clone Wars revival as part of its launch, this story arc was chosen as the first out of 3 to be finished. Originally, this story arc took up production code 609 to 612 as the 3rd arc of the 6th production season, being the first arc of the 6th production season planned to air as part of the 7th release season. When this arc was chosen to be finished for the twins' final season production, it adopted the production codes 101 to 104. This story arc was originally written by Brent Friedman and Matt Michnovetz. Had this arc been finished as part of the original production, there would have been alterations to the script compared to its story reels, as is standard practice, but due to the space of time between the original script production and the production of the twins iteration, more major alterations would have been applied. These script edits/alterations were carried out by Dave Filoni, who would have done this for all 12 episodes of the twins production. Thanks to the trivia gallery on StarWars.com and artist portfolios, we have designs created for both the original Clone Wars production that has the label The Clone Wars and the final season production that is labelled Twins, with the dates on each corresponding to when both versions of the arc would have been in their design stages. This places the design stage of the original production version of the Bad Batch arc between July and September 2012. Had this story arc been finished in the original production as intended, it would have most likely released in the fall of 2014, around the same time when the first season of Star Wars Rebels started. Due to the characters not being changed and only edits to the existing reels, none of the episodes in the arc got redirected, and thus still only credit the directors from the original production. Starting with the first episode of the story arc, also titled The Bad Batch, the first change we see is that the fortune cookie has been replaced. The original was, the best defense is a strong offense, but this was changed to, embrace others for their differences, for that makes you whole. This morale was not included in the story reel, but instead replaced with a message thanking the Clone Wars fans. The opening narration was altered, with the sequences seemingly having had a crossfading effect added to them, blending the different intro sequences together. The Arc 170's inclusion in the space battle intro sequences had been removed for some unknown reason. The Clone Wars theme tune has also been reverted back to the original version from early Season 1 episodes, with it having different mixing to what was heard in later ones. An example of script tweaks in this episode is the explanation of Rex's algorithm being changed. An entire sequence with Rex and Cody in the Clone Barracks was added, with the Clone Barracks itself being a new location in the story arc, not present in its original story reel version. This sequence has Rex lament on the loss of clones like Fives and Heavy, showing us an image of Rex, Cody, Fives and Echo in Phase 2 armor, which is bizarre because the Phase 2 armor wasn't introduced until after Echo's supposed death at the Citadel. An explanation can be that maybe off-screen they were testing out what would become their replacement armor before they went on the mission to the Citadel. Kix's model got changed for the 2020 Twins version of this episode, now having hair compared to his mostly shaving appearance from before, while Jesse now lacks the rangefinder that he had in the story reel version. Furnox were added in the background to scenes where the clones sit around the lamplight. Matthew Wood is credited as a super tactical droid, despite there only being a T-series tactical droid in the actual episode. Moving on to the second episode, A Distant Echo, we have another changed fortune cookie, the original being, wars are not won with superior weapons, but with superior strategy, being changed to, the search for truth begins with belief. Hunter doesn't state that the Havoc Marauder, quote, doesn't scream Republic anymore, and Obi-Wan doesn't show up during the initial hangar conversation sequence, instead being replaced with Anakin using Rex to fake an excuse to leave. This then leads into the replacement of the entire boarding the Marauder sequence with the notorious Padme pin-up art, with a sequence featuring Anakin having a secret conversation with Padme over hologram. This sequence was said to have been added to allow Catherine Tabor a part in the final season of The Clone Wars, considering originally Padme did not feature in any of the 12 episodes that were chosen to be finished. The sequence also confirms that both Rex and Obi-Wan explicitly know of Anakin's close relationship with Padme, with Obi-Wan arriving here to inform Anakin that the Council have denied their mission request, this happening later in the episode than in the original story reel version. This episode contains the first appearance of Skako Minor, while it would go unfinished for quite some time and end up appearing in Dr. Aphra 15 in the meantime. The 2020 Twins version of this episode will finally show the planet in its fully rendered visual glory. Trench contacting Wat Tambor has been placed later in the episode compared to the story reel version. A direct reference to the events at the Citadel has been added when Rex and Crosshair get into a fight. This replaces the original reason for the fight being Crosshair accusing Echo of becoming a traitor. The story reel misspelt Wat Tambor's name with an added U in Tambor. We reach the third episode, On the Wings of Keeradaks, with yet another fortune cookie change from "In war there is no such thing as neutrality" to "Survival is one step on the path to living." Probably the most notable change of the story arc is the removal of the sequence with the organic decimator, where Wat Tambor uses it on a Poltec citizen to show Anakin the seriousness of the situation, with Anakin trying and failing to negotiate Echo's release. There has never been an official reason given as to why this scene was removed. On the one hand, it could have been due to pacing reasons, as why spend a lot of time demonstrating a weapon that ultimately gets destroyed anyway and is never included again. But the other side of the argument is that now this scene is removed, it makes Anakin seem impatient and removes the element of heightened stakes that the scene had with it kept in. Not only that, but without that scene, the organic decimator seems to teleport between sequences now. Something that suggests this scene was removed due to censorship is that the word organic was also removed from all mentions of the weapon. I think, if they really had to censor it, that they should have kept the Anakin negotiation sequence in, but change it so we see Anakin's horrified reaction to the death of the Poltec citizen, but not the death itself, which would have given the viewer a bit of mystery to what it actually did, adding to the urgency of the batch needed to hurry up and leave the room. This would have prevented the episode being reduced by 4 minutes like it ended up being. Something that supports the sequence introducing the decimator being removed due to not adding anything to the story is how later animated releases on Disney Plus have been more graphic than this story arc, and the Crystal Crisis on Utapau reels, showing the depiction of blood as well as a full shot of Grievous impaling a Night Sister on his saber, compared to when he impaled the Pau'an Governor, which was reeled in such a way that you don't see the impact wound. The one and only inclusion of Admiral Trench, that being a mention of him by Wat Tambor, was also removed from the final version of the episode. We reach the final episode of this story arc, Unfinished Business, with its fortune cookie yet again being changed. The original was, learn from the past but live for the future. This being changed to, trust placed in another is trust earned. The addition of several lines of dialogue from different members of the Bad Batch is added, where they each suspect that Echo could be a traitor. This could be why the one from a distant Echo was replaced. The clones with Mace Windu have been changed from the 501st Jetpack Troopers to a unique brown unit being the 187th Battalion, now matching them up with the clones that appeared with Windu in the intro sequence of the first episode of the story arc. Considering the 187th Battalion appeared in the story reel version of said intro, it is most likely that these 501st Troopers were always intended as placeholders and would have been changed before the end of the original production cycle, had it been completed. For some unknown reason, the clone pilot has reverted from the Revenge of the Sith design that was previously seen in the Season 6 episode Fugitive back to the earlier Clone Wars style pilot, where none of the clone's face can be seen. This is a change that affected the whole of the Twins' produced final season, with all the pilots in the Siege of Mandalore arc also being that earlier Clone Wars design. Maybe it is due to the fact that the LA-AT pilot in the story arc's first episode was the older clone pilot design, and they wanted to make the pilots consistent, though I think it was better before having both types of clone pilot. The ending scene of the award ceremony has been replaced with a more in-character one of the Bad Batch not turning up to the ceremony. This in turn allows Rex and Echo to have a final moment together, where Rex embraces Echo's choice in joining the Batch as a full-time member. I much prefer this ending to the story reel version, which felt like a bog-standard we won the battle sequence, not related to any of the characters at hand, and I believe it's possible this ceremony scene could have been replaced in the original version of the story too, had it been finished for its presumed fall 2014 deadline. On the other hand, it could have also been added so that they didn't need to have the Kashyyyk arc finished to establish that Echo joins the Batch in preparation for their own show, though this new ending would have actually been a better lead into the unfinished Kashyyyk arc. At the time of the March 2013 cancellation, this story arc had reached the same stage as the Bounty Hunter arc, Crystal Crisis on Utapau, and Ahsoka's Walkabout, having completed its main voice acting sessions and story reels for all 4 episodes. Though, like with those arcs, post-production voice touch-ups wouldn't have been performed yet, which means that some background voices or brief secondary characters might not have had dialogue. The 4 reels for this arc were released online during Star Wars Celebration 2015, being the second and sadly last arc to get this treatment. Due to this, however, this arc has the unique position of us being able to watch 2 different versions of it at different points during its development. I do think it's possible that they tried to get the Ahsoka's Walkabout reels released in 2016, but weren't allowed to due to Solo: A Star Wars Story, so just released a clip of the only action sequence available before the episode introduces Lando in the laundromat. And then for Celebration 2017, they could have tried to get the Bounty Hunter arc reels released, but weren't allowed to, possibly due to a Bounty Hunter embargo for the cancelled anthology movie, or maybe due to how Disney were planning to bring the show back, with the Twins production starting sometime in 2017, as the first designs for the Twins version of this arc are dated to late 2017, which would have been after the scripts had been gone through. This story arc was to be the first out of 5 planned arcs for what was to be the 20-episode 7th season of the show, which was not originally planned as its final season. The Twins version of this story arc introduced the current version of the Clone Wars logo, where Star Wars is now on one line as opposed to it being separated between the text of The Clone Wars. Clone Force 99's namesake is obviously a reference to fallen Clone 99, who appeared in the Season 3 episodes Clone Cadets and ARC Troopers. While the Bad Batch were all designed in 2012, when this story arc was revived for the Twins production, they decided to redesign all of the Batch from a template of Rex, after it was deemed their original designs looked too varied to be clones. You can especially see this with Crosshair's original design. The models of Anakin and Obi-Wan that were created for the unfinished Crystal Crisis on Utapau arc were further updated with the revival of this story arc. Mace Windu's model was significantly updated for the Twins version, including thickening his neck, altering the appearance of his torso, and giving him fully animated sleeves, something which has become more affordable to do in the time span between when this arc was cancelled and when it was revived for its 2020 completion. Fort and Axis would go on to appear in Star Wars Rebels Season 1, showing that an unspecified cataclysmic event had turned the planet into a barren asteroid field, most likely being the bomb that Mace was able to disarm, though I would not rule out it being an early test for an Imperial superweapon during the development of the first Death Star. The Furnox, as seen in A Distant Echo, originated from Star Wars Rebels and were retroactively added in as an Axis wildlife. The original Padme pinup artwork that was on the Havoc Marauder was reused for the interior of Rex's AT-TE in the Star Wars Rebels, The Lost Commanders, and Relics of the Old Republic episodes, which could explain why it wasn't used in the Twins version of this story arc, though it could actually have a story behind it, where Rex somehow kept it in memory of Padme after Anakin got the Batch to remove it off screen, with it being the only piece of memorabilia he had of her. The opening to A Distant Echo was used in the teaser trailer for the revival of the Clone Wars back in 2018, with the sequence edited to have Hunter, Anakin, and Rex look up at a Republic fleet in the sky. The Padme hologram scene in A Distant Echo establishes that this story arc now takes place during the Outer Rim sieges, something that obviously wasn't intended originally when another 36 episodes of the show would have aired after this story arc. This in turn places at least one more arc into this time frame as well, being the direct follow-up to the Bad Batch's story, Yoda and the Bad Batch on Kashyyyk, which included Echo fully integrated into the team, complete with new Bad Batch armor. That story arc is still canon thanks to references in the second season of the Bad Batch show, as well as an indirect reference by Crosshair in the Bad Batch's final season. This move in the timeline also warranted the removal of an axis from the core worlds, moving it to the Outer Rim to comply with it being a part of the sieges. Obi-Wan's direct confirmation that he knows about Padme and Anakin's relationship could be a nod to a cut sequence from Revenge of the Sith, where it is established that Obi-Wan always knew about the relationship, but didn't say anything because he knew Anakin was happy. This arc, alongside Forces of Destiny, confirms that pretty much all of the people close to Anakin during the war, that being Ahsoka, Rex, and Obi-Wan, all knew of his relationship with Padme, jokingly making their relationship Anakin's worst kept secret. A Distant Echo shows us what Tambor's new design, being closer to Revenge of the Sith than his Season 1 model did, with what Tambor himself somehow having been freed from Republic prison since then. Tech's visor in On the Wings of Keeradaks includes a reference to Purgil, a species of space whale created for the second season of Star Wars Rebels that would go on to have a big role for that show's finale and the Ahsoka show. Obviously, this reference was another Star Wars Rebels tie-in added in the Twins version and wouldn't have been present in the original. At one point during the planning stages for the 2020 final season of the Clone Wars, Dave Filoni was possibly going to include Son of Dathomir. I believe that this story arc was ultimately chosen over that one due to being further along in development with completed and easy to edit story reels, as well as it being the backdoor pilot to the Bad Batch show that would come afterward if they got greenlit for more animation episodes on Disney+. Son of Dathomir would have most likely cost more to produce due to its lack of story reels, as well as the fact it has major battle sequences in all 4 of its episodes, with there being more than just 2 opposing sides, with the likes of Mandalorians, droids, Pikes, the Black Sun, Night Brothers, Jedi, and clones all fighting and taking part in different battle sequences. As well as not all the models would have been created for Son of Dathomir, as when the show's production got cancelled, the last thing created was the concept art for the Ord Mantell Republic base, which would have gone on to have its location model created had the cancellation not happened. It's possible this is why Ord Mantell never appeared in Rebels, while a lot of the other unfinished Clone Wars assets did, especially within that show's first season. I believe that the new fortune cookies fit this story arc's narrative more than the ones that were used in the story reels. While I do quite enjoy this arc, I do not think that it should have been part of a final season. Its inclusion, in my opinion, feels more to set up the following Bad Batch show than it did concluding any character arc set up in this one. It's a shame that they decided to use a final season of a show to introduce a bunch of new characters, when instead we could have had another story arc that concluded the story of characters introduced beforehand. Then they could have used the first 8 episodes of the Bad Batch Season 1 to finish their 8 unfinished Clone Wars episodes, introducing them in a unique way that would show us who these characters are before they have their lives changed by Order 66. It would have also come with the added benefit of not leaving those 4 Kashyyyk arc episodes unfinished, which could have then tied closer to the episodes of the Bad Batch where they returned to Kashyyyk with Gungi and a new experience with Omega. The fact that this arc and Ahsoka's walkabout were chosen over arcs such as Son of Dathomir, the Sith Shrine, and Rex and R2 story arcs kind of tells me that they weren't given the budget to do those arcs, with 8 out of the 12 allowed episodes essentially having been locked in with only their visuals, sound design, and some post-production tweaks needed to be finished by the time of the original cancellation, with those arcs probably having only needed 4 to 6 more months of development to complete them bar soundtrack. Not only was there probably a limited initial budget with these episodes, which essentially acted as a Disney Plus original animated content pilot, but we also have the fact that Lucasfilm Animation was split during their production, as Star Wars Resistance was in development at the same time. The completion of said Son of Dathomir or Sith Shrine arcs over this one would have allowed Maul's escape from Sidious to not be explained away off screen, or with the latter having allowed the final season to be completely Ahsoka-centric, which would have made sense considering she is the Clone Wars' most major original character, and would have also allowed us an arc with the main Jedi trio of the show, as well as one last arc that actually featured 2 of the show's 3 main villains again, while at the same time expanding on Ahsoka's character traits. While the quote final season has been described as a Rex arc and a Ahsoka arc, and then bringing the two together, I honestly feel that the Rex R2 Top Gun with clones and the Sith Shrine story arcs would have worked much better to convey that across, as Rex has to share his story in the Bad Batch with not only a revived Echo, but also an entire new team of unique clones, while Ahsoka's walkabout was edited in such a way that makes a lot of people assume that the Sith Shrine arc can no longer happen with her involved, though personally, I think there is still wiggle room for it to work. Had this story arc been finished as intended as the full 20 episodes season 7 premiere, I would not have any issue with it, as I do like the story itself, just not the real life circumstances of it being chosen over 10 other story arcs that should have been completed alongside it. I feel that it is such a shame that we have to imagine a quote-unquote perfect world scenario for story arcs that Lucasfilm clearly wanted to tell us a decade ago before they were cut short, given time to move on when Disney XD most likely did not want to have the Clone Wars on their network, and then suddenly be thrust back into it in 2017 when Disney Plus needed something to gain subscribers for its launch. With the increasing playing it safe direction that all the Disney-owned IP seem to be favouring these days, I feel like the one silver lining to this would be potentially having Disney to get Lucasfilm to finish those 40 unfinished episodes of the Clone Wars, as they already know how hugely popular it is, as well as it costing less to produce compared to these one-season live-action shows that they keep greenlighting, which builds up fans and creatives who make them to get invested in them, to only then cancel them when they don't reach the heights of, say, Game of Thrones. Personally, having them finish in those episodes would also allow me to appreciate more not only those quote final season episodes, but also the other animated shows they've made since. And while I do like the newer animated shows, it would remove that mental back of the mind burden of feeling like these new stories have replaced stories that had huge potential and are also constantly still being referenced in these new shows as if the stories have actually been finished and released anyway. I now have an active channel membership available. This will grant you exclusive perks like emojis in the comments, usernames listed in my outros, and updates to what's coming next posted exclusively for members in the community tab. But the best feature is you get 5 days early access to new videos, and you will be supporting me at the same time. To find out more, you can click the join button on my channel page. Thank you to anyone who considers becoming a channel member. Thank you for watching. Please see the video description below for interesting links, sources and credits. And if you enjoyed, please like, subscribe and comment. Until the next time, goodbye.